Hi, everybody. So by now, if you've read a lot of the articles, you might be thoroughly confused on what it means to use viewport widths to create fluid typography. It's actually far easier than it sounds. I had you do your code as you normally would with pixel-based sizes, and now you're just going to switch those to viewport width so that you can see the text change and go back and forth in terms of size. So I have just basic type here that says I go up and I go down, and you see when I open and close the window that it gets larger and smaller. Notice it stops at a certain size. It won't go any smaller than that. You can determine all kinds of things like that. And I also have it so that it can't get any larger. So right now, the font size is 72 pixels. And you'll notice I put in here a little note. You can use a size fallback that doesn't look awful, just in case your browser doesn't read fluid typography properly. So fluid typography is the wave of the future. In your advanced web classes, you may not be using it because of the fact that it's still developing, coming along, and not perfect yet. But you need to know about it, and since this is a typography class, we're talking about fluid typography. You've been using pixels for the size of your typography in this class for the most part, but viewport width, if you use that VW instead, and you can also use viewport height if you want to make changes that way, we're using viewport width. You can use that width to get essentially a percentage of the screen size. So I have my basic HTML. You all know how to do this. I've linked to my CSS style sheet. I've got nothing more in here than my H1. Technically, I can get rid of that size. Whoops, not entirely. I wanted the first line to go away. I can get rid of that completely, and I'll save it. And then if I show you, there's just no default size. So to you, it doesn't look like anything's going wrong. But if I was on a web browser that doesn't recognize fluid typography, I wouldn't see it. So if you play with this number, and it's really dramatic because it's the size, it's a percentage. It's not just, I'll go to 4.4. It's not equal to what you've been doing with your pixels. So I'll refresh that and go up. It just goes down much smaller. Woo! And I can't get my screen any bigger or you'd see it go down. So play with those numbers, and the articles you're reading will give you complex math calculations. If you're good at that, you can feel free to use that. Usually as artists and designers, we instead tend to play around with the numbers to see what happens. Change it. Let me go to 25.4 here. I don't even need the points. I can get rid of those and save it. Pop back there again, refresh, and whoo, you see that 25 is enormous and can't even fit it on the screen. So you'll notice that your sizes are going to stay relatively small. We found in past classes that somewhere under 10 tended to work best, but this is essentially what you're going to do, and I recommend changing one, testing it before you go through and change everything. Or save your index and your CSS with different titles in a different folder. So if you have to fall back to your original and start back at the beginning, you can do so. So remember that the more complex your project is, the more difficult this is going to be. Some of you are using extensive divs, and you'll just have to, one step at a time, just take it slow. Thank you.